All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Writer's Block podcast. And for those on the call and those who will listen to this replay later, I am so thankful, excited to welcome Jennifer Dukes Lee to the podcast today. She is a writer, a former news journalist. She is a farmer's wife who lives in Iowa. And she also is an acquisitions editor for Bethany House Publishers, and that's a division of the Baker Publishing Group. And she's also the author of several books, including Growing Slow. You've probably seen that, that's been out for a while. And her newest release, which I have right here, Stuff I'd Only Tell God, which is a guided journal. It says, a guided journal of courageous honesty, obsessive truth telling, and beautifully ruthless self discovery. Love,
That's a
love the
mouthful.
subtitle. That's a mouthful, but it's very poetic and clear what it's about. And Jennifer just writes with a lot of honesty and hope and trust in God's timing. And so, anyway, we're so thankful to have you here today. Welcome, Jennifer.
Well, thank you. Talking with writers about writing, like really about anything, is like one of my favorite things. I love an audience of writers. Like we think in a different way. We just do. And we all live our lives twice. We have the thing that happened, and then we roll it around and figure out how to either journal about it or put it into a social media post or maybe a book or whatever. And it's just a really powerful tool to encourage others. And also, I think it's like a form of therapy for our own selves. So
It
I don't
really
know. I
is.
mean, like we all speak the same language, and this is just really cool. So, you guys, thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, the pleasure is ours. And I feel the same. It feels like we all kind of can speak the same language. We know the same struggles of writing and putting our work out into the world and wanting, obviously, to glorify God with the words that we put out. So, tell us, Jennifer, a little bit. I mean, I know many of us on this call are familiar with you, but to some who might be listening, are not familiar with your story and how you got to this place of not only authoring books, but working in the publishing industry and coming out of journalism. Tell us a little bit about what that journey looked like for you.
Sounds great. So I have been asking questions since I was a really little girl. Mom says that one of my first words was why. I just wanted to know why. So it made sense that I became a news reporter. I got my first job in news when I was 16 years old. I was in high school and all I wanted to do was write. And so I got a job at the weekly paper. And from there, just this fire grew in me for journalism. So I studied journalism at Iowa State University. I became a news reporter at the Omaha World Herald and later at the Des Moines Register. And oh, you guys, covering news for the Des Moines Register was a total blast because historically we've had the first in the nation caucuses. So being as a political junkie and just getting to cover like front page news not only for Iowa but on a national scale was really exciting for me. And then dun dun dun, my career ended because my husband and I, we had a family and we decided that we wanted to move back to the farm. So we move up here. No more newsroom. No more assignments. No more interviewing presidential candidates. No more scoops. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I got to write. Well, at that time, there that I knew of, there wasn't really social media. I mean, maybe there was like MySpace or something. I don't know, but there weren't any blogs that I knew of. But around about 2007, 8, 9, I started to hear about blogs, and I started a blog, and I also started writing on Facebook every single day. And I've always been this news reporter. And then all of a sudden, I turned around to realize I'm still a news reporter. I'm just reporting on the good news. And it was so cool to me to be able to take like my experiences in life and see what the Bible had to say about these struggles that I was facing. And it felt like it was a journal. I felt like it was stuff I'd only tell God, except that it had an audience. And it was being really well received, even early on. And I ended up connecting with a literary agent who sent my proposal out to 15 different Christian publishers and resoundingly was rejected because of the size of my platform,
Mhm.
except for a couple publishers who thought, I like her idea and I like her writing. Maybe we can work with her platform eventually. We'll see what happens. But I got signed by Tyndale for my first book called Love Idol. And it was about approval seeking because that's one of my many problems. See, I never run out of book ideas because I continually come up with new issues with which God wants to work. And so
Right.
then I always have like
Yeah.
some new problem that God's trying to fix. Anyway, so I wrote that first book and then I wrote The Happiness Dare and then I wrote It's All Under Control, which I also have control issues. So there
There
became
you
that
go.
book. Then I wrote Growing Slow. But in between It's All Under Control and Growing Slow, out of the woodwork comes one of those publishers that rejected me, and it was Bethany House Publishers. And I had stayed in contact with one of their acquisitions editors just on a friendly basis. And we loved to talk about publishing. We loved to talk about, rising stars that we saw with great blogs or social media that might have a book in them. And they came to me and said, "How would you like to do that for us for a living?" Instead of just like telling us about people. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I know how to write a book. I don't know how to edit a book or acquire a book. And they said, "Oh, yes, you do. Why don't you give this some thought?" So I took 4 months to decide whether I would take this job. And I did. I took a part-time job as an acquisitions editor in 2018 with Bethany House Publishers. And it has been so meaningful to me to be able to work with a handful of authors. And, some of them are a few steps ahead of me, but most of them are a few steps behind me. And to be able to mentor them and to help them draw their stories out and to bring them into publication. That part of my writing is a really honestly a pretty private part. The only time I talk about it is when I'm in a group like this, and I'm not trying to keep it secret, but it's just not my public ministry. That is the thing that I'm doing behind the scenes to help other authors. And I also talk about it when they release their books because I like to make a big deal out of the great books that my authors produce. But I'm telling you that that's just been so cool that after a few years, actually a lot of years of writing and showing up and self-doubting and wondering if the thing that I thought was so brilliant on at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night was just utter rubbish on a Friday morning. Like all those things that we writers think, to be able to walk alongside other writers and help them, it's just the coolest thing. So I could talk about that for hours. I've probably already gone on too long, but there's just been a lot of pieces of that writing journey.
Wow. I love it. I love how you went from reporting the news to being a good news reporter, really, in a way, and then how the Lord just kind of put you in the right places and connected you. It seems like a sweet story of God's provision in your life and just how He's prepared you and given you such and increased your platform at the same time and getting your words out there into the world. That is really encouraging, I think, to us to see how the Lord, I don't know, because I think as writers we kind of strive in those areas, don't you? In that, we're always kind of trying to get our foot in the door in some form or fashion. And it seems from what you're saying, like they approached you and offered you this job that you had related experience, but not direct um, career experience in, and yet the Lord just put it in your lap.
It was. And usually for me, things like that don't happen. Most of my things are due to just not giving up and just keep trying and keep growing because I think, a lot of times I do hear people say, like, "Oh, I had no dreams of writing a book, but now I've got like a 5 book deal with, 6-figure advance or whatever." I'm like, well, how does that happen? Okay, good for you. But right. I mean, like, there's a lot of us out here just like trying to work really hard. I mean, there's so much that's going on behind every book or every book contract, or most anyway. I mean, for me, it's since I was 16 years old, I've been writing. And, I'll have people come to me like, I've been blogging for 2 years and I just can't figure out how I can't get published. And I'm like, girl, you know what? Grow slow because it just takes
Mhm.
time. It just takes
Yes.
time to like build up an audience. It takes time to hone your craft. It takes time to make sure that the way that you're saying things is connecting with people out in the real world. It takes time to just live a life. And it's just not too late. Like, I think we just get in such a hurry for some publishing company to validate our work when,
Mhm.
hello, we live at a time in history where we can self-publish something every single day on social media. Like usually you had to wait for years or months to get something in a magazine or to see your book published, but now we get to encourage people every single day on social media. So that's a beautiful thing, just alone getting to encourage people. But then on the flip side, like it's also this lab that helps us learn how do people respond to the way that I communicate. I know that did not answer exactly the question that you were just asking, but
No,
it's
but
so much on my heart. It's so
yeah,
much
it
on my
is
heart.
such a combination of just hard work and practice
Yeah.
too, and honing the skills of writing, because you really do have to have that. In addition to the platform and all of the things that we want in our writing journeys. But yeah, it is. We are so blessed to live in this time and be able to get better at our craft as we go and
Hmm.
test out ideas, like you said. So. I really love that encouragement. Well, I kind of wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk
Hmm.
about the stuff I'd only tell God. And that I got the book obviously and have been kind of looking through it. I think a lot of writers are naturally good journalers.
Hmm.
We like to kind of process our thoughts in writing. And so it was that part of your inspiration. You said you were always a good question asker. And I think
Hmm.
often we have to kind of get to know some of the stuff in our own hearts, but tell us more about like why you felt like this book was needed.
Well, in it is a definitely a book. It's like a book that's only half written, right? It's like I give the prompt and then the rest is up to you. So it could potentially be a great resource for any creative, any writer, because it's just basically 200 pages of writing prompts that
Hmm.
hopefully help you heal, as you move through them. But for me, I think that yeah, I've always asked questions. I'm that annoying person at the dinner party that you're just like, I wish she would go away. I wish she would just go find somebody else to ask these questions. I really didn't want to, I didn't want to answer these things tonight. And I don't mean to be that annoying or that nosy. I'm just like genuinely really interested in the stories that people have. I think that people are just so incredibly interesting and have so much to offer. And I've learned a lot around the dinner table. And I don't like, drill into people like I did news sources. But I do think that a few really good questions can not only create sort of an entertaining and warm environment around a dinner table, but can also lead to a lot of healing if we ask each other good questions and take time to answer honestly.
Yeah,
S-
I personally wish there were more of those annoying question askers at dinner. Like, I probably would really enjoy having dinner with you because I think that's kind of a skill we're losing. I don't know if you
Yeah,
would
good
agree.
point.
I feel like the people that ask you questions are people who aren't really all about themselves. They're really about other people. And I find that so refreshing when I'm with somebody who's like, who wants to get to know me. And so I think that I wouldn't say that's an annoying quality at all. I think it's something that we could all grow in. And I think that's such a great exercise of getting to know yourself and other people as you're going on. So I think that's great. Do you find that the process you've mentioned healing a couple of
Hmm.
times? Why that word? Why do you think that this is something that's needed for people? Because maybe there is obvious areas where there's trauma or healing, but I mean, just maybe being honest with ourselves too is a form of healing. I'm sorry about my dog barking.
That's okay. Yes, it is. It is a healing practice to, not stuff things down, but to find a way to let them make their way to the surface, whether that's in a conversation, in a Bible study, or over dinner, over coffee with your best friend. And especially, I think, when we have these kind of conversations with God, the stuff that we would only tell God. He knows all that stuff anyway. But because he's a relational God, he chooses to open up the seat for you to sit in and to ask questions and to answer questions. He wants to be in that exploring uh, process with you as you kind of plumb the depths of your soul and think through your past, think through your relationships, think through your hopes and your dreams, maybe things that you wouldn't feel comfortable even uttering to the people that you love the most. But finding a way to have those kind of conversations with God is indeed healing and switches something in us. I think it creates a kind of courage, that vulnerability, and just knowing that God's sticking around as you share these hard things with Him. And also, if you flipped through the pages of Stuff I Didn't Only Tell God, it's not just like these really deep, serious things. It's also just some kind of whimsical, weird things. Like, God delights in our delight. Like, we can come to Him just in our silly, quirky, weird selves and just share things that are interesting to us, or that are whimsical or create a sense of wonder and awe. And I wanted to create a resource for people to do all of those things, and that each turn of the page would be a bit of a surprise. And I do candidly admit that some of the pages are difficult to complete. When I wrote Stuff I'd Only Tell God, I remember sitting out on my sunroom right there. I'm like, can I really put this in the book, God? I mean, is this kind of weird? And just I had so much fun creating this. But what was less fun was when I had to turn that thing around and actually answer some of the prompts. There's
Mm.
some pages in there
Yeah.
that I'm like, I don't know. It didn't even really occur to me. I created it in this vacuum, in this, in my sunroom, just thinking about the person on the other end and their user experience. But when I did it after its release, when I began to go through it as just a user and answer those questions, I was like, wow, some of these pages are really hard to fill out, but also, again, really healing. I'm glad that I've gone through the pages. I'm glad that I've taken the time to do the work, to think about hard relationships in my life, to think about questions that I have about, you know, different Bible verses that challenge me, or things about God that I used to believe that I don't believe anymore, or things that I didn't used to believe about God, but that I do now. In acknowledging that I have shifted in different ways over time, and how beautiful that can really be.
Mm. I love that. Do you feel that for a writer in particular, like sometimes getting in touch with some of those things that we haven't maybe like verbalized the emotions around it, do you find that that's really helpful in your creative process too? Because often I think um, sometimes our experiences are very isolating, but as we can kind of write through them and think
Hmm.
through them, that's a way to connect with other people, and maybe a really great way to kind of see how can my words go out to other people who maybe experienced something similar. Um,
Hmm.
but do you find that that is like a real part of your writing process?
Yes, absolutely. So, even just in the journal itself, I feel like it would be easy for a writer to use that as a tool, just like even a ministry tool or a writing tool. Like, I don't know what to write about today. I mean, there's just all these prompts that could stir up something with you. But beyond that, in a more personal way, when we journal, whether it's through a guided journal or just through our own blank journals, without expecting any kind of audience at all, it breaks open something because we're not assuming that somebody is going to read it. So I think that we're often rather honest in our journals in a way that we couldn't be maybe on a first draft of a manuscript.
Mm,
But later, because you've done the hard work in the journal, when you do get to the manuscript, you've already unlocked something that you didn't even know was there. We can write our way toward some kinds of answers that when the pen first hit the paper, we didn't even know the journey that we were going on or the destination that we would land at. But that is such an important part of writing. And
yeah.
yes, I do that. A lot of my journals are fairly public, in the sense that even some of the pages of they're not everything, but a lot of pages even in my journal I've shared online. And also a lot of my initial processing since I started blogging, that thing was like a journal. Like I didn't share, long lost memories or, secrets or shameful things that happened when I was 17 years old or whatever. I mean, I've had to process those differently, but there's a lot of things that I've kind of taken to the public rather soon, and maybe according to some writers, probably too soon. But I think it's just the way that I've always been at this kind of writing. Just like this is the story, it's going to be in the next day's paper.
Mm,
It's like
yeah.
sometimes just a few hours different. I think I've been trying more to back off of that a little bit and think about what is just for me, Lord, and me and you, and what is really for public consumption. So that's an area of growth and learning for me because I've been taught and my patterns have been set a certain way for so long that yeah, I've kind of had to back off of that a little bit and ask a lot of times, is this just for me and you, God, or is this something for the out in the wild?
Yeah, and that could be part of another writing prompt, right?
Yeah,
You
that's
get
so
it, you get
true.
you get it out, and then you're like, well, is this for me or for others too? So yeah, I get that. We had one guest one time say that you should write from scars and not open wounds.
Hmm.
I thought that was a really helpful way to think about it. But I know I love that like that journalism kind of comes through in what you're describing. It's like you're kind of used to a quick turnaround on things, but that keeps
Hmm.
things fresh. And I think it's such a great way for your audience to connect with you because it's
Yeah.
like you're real, like you're being real as you share.
It's interesting, this scars and wounds writing. I've heard that a lot, and I agree with it to a large, almost entirely agree with it. Um, and yet, like for instance, I wouldn't write about from woundedness about, maybe some relationship break, like some friendship breakup or something like that, or something awful that happened to my kid the day before. Like I wouldn't go do that. But there are times when I have written in the midst of something really difficult that have probably been some of the best writing that I've done. And an example of that is when I was grieving the long goodbye of my dad. I was very open about the process and what was going on inside of me and what I was trying to sort out. And it was during that time when I heard from writers or from readers in a way unlike I had before. It was very much out of the rawness of grief and even pre-grieving his death. But I'm so glad I did it because, in a way, it helped me grieve and understand. And at the same time, as I was going down this path, I was getting to help others and I didn't even realize it. So I think there's probably a time and place for it, but there's certain kinds of pain that need to be dealt with pretty considerably before you put it out into the public spaces.
Yeah, and you never want to go back and I always ask myself, am I going to regret this? Like, or is this going to bring embarrassment to me or to someone I love? Or is this going to burn a bridge? Or,
Hmm.
those are some of the questions I think about too. Space has asked a couple good questions. She said, is there a prompt in the book? Can I put, wait, I'm sorry. Here it
So the
is.
first
What
one,
is
what
the
was the,
hardest
yeah.
writing prompt for you personally in your book?
Yeah, there's two of them. And the very first one is it's like when you first open the journal, it's like basically list all the people. Like this whole repository of all the people in your life. Because the first section of the book is all about people. So I wanted people to go way back and think about all the people they've intersected with in a meaningful way. Somebody who made an impact on their life for better or worse, so that they could kind of use that as a guide as they go through the people section. And it would kind of get things flowing. Even if you didn't right then and there tell the story, like it'd really get you flowing. But what I found is that there were certain people's names that I did not want to mar the journal or the page, people that I'd rather forget. And it was difficult for me to write their whole name down. In fact, I had initials for certain people's names because it was so difficult to even, it's like kind of like a Voldemort thing, right? I was like, he who shall
It
not be
shall not be
named.
spoken.
I
Yeah.
do not want to put this name down. And it was painful for me. And then the second one that was really hard is there is a genogram in there, Genogram. And a genogram is kind of like a family tree, but it's where you look at habits and characteristics and personality traits of the people in your past, like as far back as you can remember. So you would think about maybe personality traits like, grandma was especially faithful, or my Uncle Joe was especially kind, but it might also look at the bad habits and addictions of people in your past. And you would think through, what do I want to carry forward? And what do I want to have stop with me in my generation? And it was just hard to reckon with some of that and to face some of that, and um, maybe to see some of the, to see some of the good traits in me, but to also see what I was potentially carrying forward that I didn't really want to. Again, quite healing, but also it was really hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really honest. That's really good, and probably something that maybe we'd benefit from doing a couple times, maybe complete one book and a few years later do it again, right?
Yeah.
Because we're always growing and evolving in those relationships
Yeah.
that we have. Um, what would you say to somebody who maybe has your book or not, but the whole idea of opening a journal, you feel maybe a little overwhelmed. Often we talk about the blank page is overwhelming. You've provided not blank pages, you've provided a place for people to kind of be guided through that process, but it is a bit overwhelming, right? It is a
Hmm.
bit overwhelming to get started on something like that. Do you have any encouragement for people who might be feeling that way?
Yes. So that's exactly why I created a guided journal, with less kind of open ended questions. I mean, they're open ended in the sense that it's beyond a yes or a no. But there's a way for anybody really to engage with the content. Even, this is popular among people my age. I'm 53, and people older than me, but it's really popular with teenagers and college students, which I did not anticipate. So it's helped younger people get into journaling as well. Um, and I think that my biggest advice would be not to treat it necessarily as a linear journey, like I can't move on until I complete this page. Some things may just be a little harder to address because of the kind of things that I was talking about with the hard questions for me. So giving yourself permission to skip pages that are a bit too hard for now and find something that just feels a little bit easier, especially if you've never done it before, or maybe even skip right to the sections like me and my weird ways, which is kind of the quirky, fun things about ourselves. Looking for those pages. And once you get practiced at being honest in less, high intensity type questions, you might be willing to, dig a little bit deeper next week or next month.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's kind of easing into the kiddie pool
Yes,
before diving off the high dive.
so true.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk to you just about kind of like the creative process. I mean, the journaling is obviously a big part of that, but in your other book about growing slow, I think is a good companion um, idea to how we look at our work as
Hmm.
writers, our desire, like to cross the finish line. We love having the finished product. Um, but has there been moments when God met you in the middle of your writing where it just feels like, you know, I I realize that this is a growing part and this is painful. I really want to get on the other side of this. And like how has writing helped you maybe as you're writing or writing as a project? How has God helped you through that? Does that make sense? How is
Yeah, to your
growing slow?
question of to your question of has God met me into, in the middle of something that felt hard and taught me
Yeah.
something
Yeah, and
every
just
single day, every
growing
single day.
slow in the midst of that, and
Yeah.
really we really want to not grow slow. Like, we don't really like that part.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to know about the growing slow process more?
Yeah, yeah, tell
Okay.
us more about that.
Okay. So growing slow as a concept, not the creative act of putting growing slow together, just
Well,
for
I'm kinda
clarity.
I'm kind of marrying those 2
Okay.
ideas together because we're talking to writers, and I'm thinking of, like, how can the growing slow concept be an encouraging thing for us as writers?
Okay. So Growing Slow is a book that leans heavily on the metaphor of growth on the farm and the seasons of growth outside this window. My husband plants seeds in the spring, and it takes a while before we see any growth. And sometimes our writing can feel that way. Like, I got out there, Lord, you gave me these seeds. I planted them into this little field that you gave me. I'm going out there every day, and it looks like nothing is growing. And then all of a sudden, one day you go out into these fields out here and you see a tiny little shoot of something green. And we celebrate. It is so fun. Even though we know, I mean, we've been out this a few years out here. I mean, the Lees have been planting corn and soybeans in these fields since 1870, right? And the crops keep
Mhm.
coming up. But the growth is so incremental that it can be quite frustrating at times, both as a farmer and as a writer, to wait and see that growth. And then all of a sudden comes summer and things are blooming. And that's what we hope for, is to see some growth, getting the manuscript done. I just hit the 40,000 word mark. I'm almost at 55,000. Woo, this is great. But then boom, drought comes, windstorm comes, some kind of storm comes out here on the farm that can level a field of crops or that can make it just our crops are parched. And the same is true in the creative process of growing slow, feeling like a storm has hit us out of nowhere, feeling like we are dry and parched and we have nothing left to say but a 55,000 word deadline in 2 weeks. And I think then is when we can be extremely happy that God delights in things that grow slow. Because what is happening in the spring before we see all that growth shooting up through the ground is that the plants are sending roots way down deep into the water or into the ground. And the reason they go way down deep in times of drought is so that they can find water. And the same is true of us. If we are not deeply rooted, if we don't have our platforms rooted, if we don't have our souls rooted, if we don't have our why and our aims rooted in the things of God, we're going to easily topple over when those droughts come and when those storms come in our writing. Like, those roots are what keep us standing through difficult times. Then, of course, out here on the farm, harvest is great. I mean, there's nothing like holding that, fully ripened thing in your hand and relishing all that went into its growth. And the same is true for us when we hold that book in our hand, or you see an author that, like, guess what the publisher sent, and they open the box and there's their book, or you got the contract, or you got the agent, or you self-published your book, and man, you finally get to hold that thing in your hands and know what went into its growth. And, you know, the thing about a corn plant is the very last thing to grow on a corn plant is the corn. And for us as writers, the very last thing that often comes after all these years of working is this book or this talk that you're giving or whatever it happens to be. But that's not the end of things. There's another spring around the corner. There's another harvest around the corner. And it's the whole process of growing things that God delights in on the farm. And it's the whole process that he delights in as you as a writer when you in the privacy of your office are working side by side with him to produce something for his glory that others will someday hold in their hand. But I think that what we don't want to forget is that also one quarter of a season out here on this farm is winter. And if this field has to spend one quarter of a year resting, then so do we. Like that's part of what it means to grow slow is to not be in a constant state of plant, grow, harvest, skip winter, plant, grow, harvest, skip winter. The ground here needs the winter to like kill off pest and disease cycles and to do a whole bunch of other really cool things that I won't even get into, but are just awesome what happens in the winter. And winter seasons for us as well are made for rest, for celebrating what we've harvested, and for preparing the fields of our hearts for what is to come in the next spring season. And the final lesson that I have for you is as a writer, as you are growing slow, is this. In all of my years as a farm wife, I have never seen a corn plant freaking out. Not a single time. So we don't have to freak out either. If it's taking
Oh,
longer, if you're getting the rejections, if it doesn't seem like the words are coming, if you just can't quite nail the hook, whatever it happens to be, the corn plants don't freak out and we don't have to freak out either. Just grow slow with God. He is growing something in the field of your heart.
oh, wow. I needed that. I love that whole description. And I think, you know, maybe it's partly because of we're inundated with social media and these images of like the writers unboxing their books. And
Mm-hmm.
we all really want that. Like
Yeah.
that's the harvest. That's what we all like look forward to. But all of that planting and resting and watering and spring and summer, all of those things have to happen before harvest comes. And so we forget from an outsider's point of view all of that slow growth that is necessary to get to the harvest. And maybe for
Mm-hmm.
the writer, it's the most precious thing of all to hold that book and or to finish the talk or whatever it is. And because you know what work went into that and how the Lord moved and changed in your heart as you did it. So,
That's right.
oh, that's so great. Well, I feel like on that note, I should open this up to the ladies on this call and ask if you guys have any thoughts, questions.
I see one
Yeah.
here that Amy has. Should I read that one
Oh,
aloud?
yes, please.
What does winter rest look like for you as a writer? So that's a really good question. So winter doesn't always look like a whole like quarter of a year. It's not that linear. And sometimes I think in life we also go from winter season and all of a sudden we're in summer, or we're having the time of our life in a summer season and all of a sudden it's like a blizzard hits, right? So for winter rest for me looks like this. When I used to go on vacations, I would take my computer with me and I would feel like I had my readers were somehow expecting me to produce something for my blog, and I needed to be on social media every day. I just got back from England. Our daughter studies at Cambridge, and I didn't take my computer. I've been taking my computer with me for a really long time. I didn't post on social media the entire time, and my Instagram did not flame up and go away. My Facebook didn't wither. I didn't make some big announcement saying, "Hey guys, I know you're probably wondering where I'm going to be for the next several weeks, but I'm not going to be here." I just let it be. I let it be. And if I just, there were some times where I was on my phone and I thought, people might appreciate seeing this picture of me and Lydia on the River Cam, and we're, like on by the Bridge of Sighs, or we're at King's College Cathedral. And basically, when I say people might want to see it, I'm saying basically, if I don't post, Mom's going to wonder what in the heck we're doing and how come I haven't put anything on my Instagram.
At least your mom wants
Right.
to know for sure.
Yeah, so I guess that's part of it. And then also winter rest looks a lot for me like celebration, like taking moments to just be like, whoo, we got we got another book done, or we got another book deal, and taking time to really celebrate and appreciate and not take that for granted even after all these years. Um, I had another, oh, I know another one. Another winter rest is like there's a winter that comes every single day for me, and that is at 5 o'clock. I shut off the lights and I literally say out loud, good night to the office. I say good night to the office, and Scott knows it's coming. I'm done. I'm done at 5 o'clock. And so there is winter every single day. I Sabbath well on the weekends, and it helps me never to get burned out about my work and to just embrace the concepts of growing slow in my own life. Like I think for the last few months, aside for the last few days, for some reason my Instagram went up for a little bit, but for the last several months, my Instagram following hasn't moved. I mean, obviously I should be paying attention to these things, so I watch my numbers. But you know what? I don't freak out about them. It's like it is what it is. So that's kind of the winter mindset too, not feeling like I have to hustle to somehow drum up content that will be viral. Like, just, it is what it is. It's going to be fine. Just chill, enjoy it, carry on. It'll grow when it's supposed to grow, which is really funny for me to say because I really truly I am such a recovering control freak, but I believe this. This is what I believe. This is what
That's
I
good. I mean,
practice.
I think the seasonality of things, to everything there is a season,
Mhm.
Ecclesiastes tells us. And so, yeah, I like that you said you have a winter every day. Like, I think that's a good way of thinking about our rhythms too.
I love that you quoted Ecclesiastes to everything there is a season, because I'm telling you, some of the seasons in 1 through 8, Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8, aren't that great.
Right.
Like,
That's what I'm
there's a
doing.
season for mourning, there's a season
Mhm.
for killing. Like, who's going to cross stitch that and put it on a pillow, right? I mean,
Right.
there's some really hard seasons, but for whatever reason, God, pulls us through these seasons, good and hard seasons. But it says in Ecclesiastes 3:11, He is making everything beautiful in its time. Not,
Mhm.
he's making everything beautiful in a rush. He's not making everything beautiful in a hurry. He's making everything beautiful in its time. And the most beautiful things in life really do take the longest to grow. And that includes our books.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how does that mindset um, transfer to your work with the publishing house? Are you able to have patience with the authors that you're working with?
Yeah, so I hope so. I think that my authors would say that I'm very encouraging, I'm very available, that if they can't meet a deadline, then, we'll see what we can do to move things along. I think also we have to always keep in mind that we're a business, like we're counting
Mhm.
on books to show up when they're supposed to show up because they're in a catalog and retailers on the other end are asking for them. But I mean, all the time we're having to make adjustments for authors. I think by the time people get to the level of being published, they know that there are going to be certain benchmarks and deadlines. So I help them reach those in a way that works in their with their lives. Like even on the front end, I'll get some very ambitious young writers who will say, I'll have that manuscript to you in 4 months. And I'm like, no, you're not. You have two little kids at home and you're pregnant. You're due in 2 weeks. You're not going to have that done in 4 months. So I think it more comes on the front end of just saying, hey, look, this is what it takes to write a book. This is what it takes to market a book, and helping them see that let's work this out on the front end so that we can create realistic expectations for everybody, so that you aren't, going crazy trying to figure out how to get that book done.
Yeah, I love that. That's so important and good to hear that there's like an expectation that real life happens
Hmm.
in between getting a book deal and finishing a book.
Yeah.
So that's good. Cheryl asks, what do you love or enjoy most about your job?
There's so much I love. Um, I think one of the things that comes to mind is part of the reason, Cheryl, that it took me 4 months to decide whether to even take this job was because I didn't really know if I wanted to see how the sausage was made. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to peek behind the curtain and be like, these guys are a bunch of jerks. Like Christian publishing is really as awful as some authors make it out to be. And these guys only care about the bottom line and they don't really care about authors. And I just didn't want to be a part of that. And I'm so glad to look behind the curtain and see really great, prayerful people who, I had editorial board meeting and we were looking at several proposals today. And yeah, we're paying attention to platform and all those kinds of things. But the bulk of our conversation is around, does this fit the distinctives of Bethany House, of leaning on the Word of God to build out a book? Because that's really important in Bethany House. Our distinctives are, we are very rooted in scriptures. There's plenty of publishers that are just fine that don't do that, but you kind of need to know when you're picking up a Bethany book, well, this is going to be scripturally based book. And that's what we do. We're helping people grow in their faith, and that is a really important part of what we're talking about behind the scenes. And just to see the people and the emphasis, but also they're really smart people, like great business people with great ideas that have made me better in what I do as an author. And that's just a really cool selfish thing that's happened. But I just finished my next book and it doesn't come out until April of 2026. But the whole time I had all of this knowledge that I could draw from years of being in pub board, from years of having editorial conversations, from years of seeing how books have performed and sometimes how books haven't performed as well as they thought they would, which also means that I have a pub board living up in my head at all times, which isn't necessarily the greatest critic up there, but it's been so cool to just have this bit of knowledge added to my tool chest that I never expected. Oh, and of course, I love working with the authors. I mean, that goes without saying. It's so cool to work with the authors. I love calling people and saying, or I love like getting that letter and well, for me to send the email to say we'd like to extend you a deal. And I love getting the email back saying we chose you. That's so
Oh,
cool because sometimes
yeah.
it's a really competitive environment. I love calling an author and saying, guess what? We got your book in Target. I love calling an author and saying, you know what? You made the ECPA bestsellers list, and that's a really big deal. So those things are really cool. I feel like a grandma to the books that I acquire. So as happy as I would be about my book baby getting into Target, I am equally happy for my grandchildren to get into Target. It's
Right.
so cool.
Yeah.
I
That is,
love it.
that would be so fun.
Yeah,
Just
it's
being a
so
bearer of
fun.
many good news phone calls and emails.
It's fun.
That would be a lot of fun. How do you balance are you part-time with Bethany House?
I am.
Okay. So
Yes.
how are you able to balance that and writing? I mean, is it kind of like 20 hours a week
It
of
is
writing?
20.
Okay.
It's 2020. So, but when I'm in book writing mode, it's more because it'll bleed over like into a Saturday writing like retreat for myself or something like that. I'm very structured about my day. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and part of Thursdays are my Bethany House days. Mondays and Fridays are my writing days. Now, technically, we're in on a Bethany House day, but we're also talking about Bethany House things. Also, I have a really great boss, and he's like, we know that you're also an author. Do the things that you need to do. But on Mondays and Fridays, I get to my computer and I can't wait for the muse to show up. I don't have that luxury. I have to just write my way toward inspiration. And so far so good. I was able to get 65,000 words, which was 10,000 over the word limit. But we got her done for this next book.
And then how long did that book take you to complete?
The idea of it, obviously, you live these things and you don't even know it's going to become a book, right? So this has been a story that I've really been living since I was a child. And I was having a conversation. Oh, I wish I could tell you guys the whole thing. If it was just us here, I would just tell you what it was about. But we were in Mexico with Lydia and Anna, our daughters, and Scott, and we were sitting there and having this conversation with the girls about this thing. And Lydia, I wasn't even meaning it to be a book. And Lydia put her hands down on the table and she said, Mom, that's your next book. And I'm like, it
Whoa.
is. Oh my gosh, it is. And I was like flipping through the Bible and I'm like, oh my, this is it. So it actually came really quickly. Then I called my agent from vacation. So Amy, that goes completely against what I'm talking about with regard to winter seasons, but I couldn't help it. I was so stoked. And she's like, yeah, that's your next book. And so we immediately, after I got home from vacation, created the book proposal and sent it off. And from May until February, I wrote the book. And then I edited it this past month, and then I'll have another round of edits coming. And I still have to write the Bible study. So there's a companion Bible study, and that's due in June.
Wow. Okay. That sounds like a pretty quick turnaround to me. I'm a new author too, so I'm working on my first book and I'm just like grinding it out. I'm in
It's harder at the beginning. It
yeah,
it
it sounds like
is.
you've just kind of gotten into a rhythm and you kind of know how the process
Yeah.
works
I
for
think you
you.
do get into a groove and you figure it out. I think that first book is so hard because you feel like you have everything. Like you got to say everything. When really just to remember like, oh, I have future books in me. I don't have to say everything in this book. Like this is what this book is about and this is what I'm going to write about. And I really struggled with that with my first book, which was Love Idol. So I had to take whole chapters out once I
Mm,
turned it into Tyndale.
yeah,
Yeah, and I was just overwhelmed with that. I love coaching authors from the start on how to write a book. And it's also why I tell every author I know, write the book proposal, even if you are going to self-publish your book, because it forces you to think about what is going to be in every single chapter. And having that scaffolding in advance helps you in the building process later.
absolutely. I have found that to be really true. I go back and I remember, oh, this is what I said it was going to be. I need to stick to that.
That's so
So,
good. You're like
yeah.
miles ahead of me at that stage.
Well, still, it's encouraging to hear that it gets a little easier and a
It
little
does.
quicker as time goes on. Well, we're getting close to the end. Are there any other questions or thoughts for Jennifer before we wrap up?
I don't know if this is too much of a question for the time we have left, but I'm earlier in the conversation you mentioned how you have never been one of those people that, except for when it came to Bethany House, where something just kind of surprised you and it was like the Lord just kind of doing something wild. And my actually, I'm a special case in the sense that that is like the story of my life. Like I've had
Mm.
so many times where it's just like surprise, like here's this thing. Like the first example that comes to mind is that we got a motorhome 5 days before our son was born when we were hitchhiking the country, and 2 days before that we didn't have a penny. Or like we ended up on Humans in New York and NBC Chicago and CNN's photo blog of the day, and all these things that like we didn't intend to be, didn't even know we were until people started telling us after the fact. um, as a result, I think I just kind of have almost been too lackadaisical when it came to trying to get this book published, because I'm like, it's okay, the Lord will just surprise me. I'll be sitting on an airplane and I'll meet a literary agent that loves my idea. And, like it's just almost this like this expectation. And I think that there's a balance point between where
Hmm.
I'm at, which is probably unhealthy in one direction, and too dependent to where I make excuses not to be faithful and vigilant and diligent, versus not trusting that the Lord can do something and just trying to produce an Ishmael when I ought to be waiting for an Isaac.
Mm.
So, what do
That's
you
so
think the
good.
balancing point is?
I think you and I should be friends and we can learn from each other, is what I think.
Sounds good to me.
You'll love space.
Because
She's amazing.
Mm,
I need like I have one of my authors is very much like you, and she'll just run into these random situations where God has so clearly moved that
mm,
I would probably cross the street and not even see the miracle that was right on the corner. And she pauses and stops everything and has eyes to see. But what I bring to the table is like, I don't give up. If I really feel that is something is worth it, I'm going to keep trying. I'm not gonna, if I don't have inspiration today, I'm not gonna just give up and throw my hands in the air. Like, I'm gonna do it. And it's not because I don't think God can. It's that I know that we are co-laboring and he's asking me to bring my part to the table. But on the other hand, it's a really beautiful thing and it's a gift to just, make yourself aware and keep your eyes open to what God is doing because he's always doing something. I enjoy the process of co-laboring with God and knowing that I got to do this thing with him. I remember after I wrote my very first Bible study for It's All Under Control, I cried when it was done because I had so much fun writing a Bible study with him. It was one of my favorite co-laboring things. It's not even like necessarily the best thing I've ever written, but it was just this sense of, God, we did this together. And that was so fun. So I think maybe since I sense that you have a really fun, adventurous spirit, and maybe if you could like find the adventure of working alongside him without losing that really beautiful part of your personality that allows you to see and experience things that I think other people might just drive on by.
I love that you said that because
Pause.
when it came to editing, I had to learn to rejoice in it. And I realized
Mm.
that that's a thing that I've had to learn to do. Like when I wrote this, I did everything in reverse order. I've been sitting on a book that I started 10 years ago that I've been working on ever since. And when I wrote the first draft, it was like a fire hose just went exploding in my soul. But then editing, I was like, oh, I have to actually learn to enjoy this. And then I started to really see um, the sunset colors in the process of editing,
I
and
love
to
that.
see the beauty in taking those sentences that were raw and unfiltered, and then crafting them into something even more luxurious and eloquent and beautiful. And so, anyways, I kind of love that you um, said that, just because I realize that that's for somebody like me, that is a challenge, or that's really like the key to unlock the challenge, is to figure out how to love the thing that you don't really want to do, you know?
That's good. That's beautiful. I love that. I hope you don't change.
Thanks.
I really love your spirit. And that
Thanks.
is some people's story. I mean, some people's story is, that God can work with all kinds of personalities and approaches. So I'd hate for you to like just sort of set that aside and have those
Thank you.
miracles just keep unfolding for you. I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Well, thanks for the encouragement. Um, so thank you.
Thanks, Space. That's a great question. So, Jennifer, where can people find you online and find your books? Probably on Amazon.
Yeah, sure. Yes, yes, yes. So, all of my online places are Jennifer Dukesley, whether that's Instagram or Facebook or even my website is Jennifer Dukesley. And then on jenniferdukesley.com, you can click on books and all of my books are there. And then you can pick your favorite retailers from there.
Wonderful. Well, that is so great. We will put those links in the show notes. And we're just really grateful for this time we got to spend with you and kind of pick your brain about stuff we'd only tell God and growing slow and perseverance and courage and all of the things that writers are struggling with and facing every day as they sit down to write. So we're really grateful for you.
Well, I'm grateful too. This was so fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Happy Easter,
Bye.
everybody.